My darlings and viewers, we are sunshine and rainbows and happiness on this channel. I am sweetness and light. Discourse Minis is doom and consumerism eating us from the inside out. It's very dystopian and it matches the vibe of Warhammer 40,000. That's just knowing me and knowing you. So would you like to introduce yourself a bit more properly?
I'm Discourse. I have a wargaming channel that focuses on kind of consumer issues in Warhammer. The prices are too high mostly. And yeah, I like to do a video every 2 weeks covering wargaming. Sometimes I talk about other games, but it's mostly Warhammer, let's be honest. I could pretty much describe wargaming. And and I also cover Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games and Hasbro and the business side of things on my other channel, which is Dungeons and Discourse as well. So I do tabletop role-playing as well. I'm a little bit of a nerd.
Oh, good. Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a wee bit. Just a wee bit. I've been playing Warhammer for like 20 years, you know?
Ah, a mere 20 years. I mean, I'm only like a couple of years ahead of you there. It's fine. It's fine. It's good to have someone that isn't like, oh, I started in 8th edition. I'm so old and been doing it for so long.
To me, I'm still living in 4th edition. I'm running around with my Witch Hunters Codex still tucked under my arm, you know?
Oh, you look. It's Agents of the Imperium Codex now.
Yeah.
Um,
That's weird. They should have just kept it, I think, Inquisition or something. That would have been badass.
Maybe. Well, it's got all the weird things. It's like, hey, this kill team that you play in your kill team games as here's your like first taste. Your first try is incredibly expensive, actually. But then the second try is still quite expensive.
Now you've got a couple of models. Now you're stuck, you know, now you're trapped. I think that if they had the Agents of the Imperium army the way it is today, back when I was like 12, I would have like lost my mind. I would have been so excited. But now I have to, because they did all the kill team releases first, I'm sort of used to them now. And so them all being bundled together under the Inquisition, I'm like, whatever.
Yeah, so is it being a classified redacted codex just a pun more than oh, here's a secret new thing? It's just the Inquisition.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I am excited to see the words Ordo Hereticus again. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I am excited. Even so, I collect Sisters of Battle, and even that army that I own was always envisioned to be primarily a sort of Inquisition first army. Like, I've got the Inquisitor, I've got all the Acolytes, I have all my own...
If you started in 3rd edition, it was Codex Witch Hunters, which is the Witch Hunter side comes first.
Yeah, and it's really funny, because I started... My first army were the Ordo Hereticus. It was that old Witch Hunters Codex, but I kind of started it in the sense of wanting to do Inquisition, and then Sisters of Battle just got tacked on.
Yeah, because there was Inquisitorial Stormtroopers. They were one of our 2 troops choices.
They were rubbish. They were terrible. Never take them.
Yeah. Oh, was that when you still had Guess Rangers in 3rd edition?
Well, I started like in 4th.
All right, okay.
4th, and I don't think there was Guess Rangers, but there might have been.
Yeah, because 3rd edition had the Hellguns were special for the Inquisition because they had Markerlight. Well, not Markerlights.
Yes!
They had red light sights, so you could pre-measure their shots.
Yes! That's right, that was their special thing. You get to pre-measure shots. That was cool, though. Like, that is a nice bit of theming. Come on. There was a lot of ways to get around that. I used to have a friend who worked in construction, and he was, like, really good at judging distances, and it was really... You just couldn't play against him. You just couldn't do it with artillery.
I got good at Battlefleet Gothic with the, that's about 22 centimeters. Yep, my Nova Cannon hits. Oh, well.
You're learning life lessons, teaching skills that are applicable in all sorts of lives, you know?
Mostly throwing things at people and having them hit.
That's a very valuable skill. Very valuable skill.
Yeah. I do love that Codex Witch Hunters, though, because in the back it had the Adversaries. Do you remember the Adversaries rules?
Yes. I have a friend who collects that army, who has the mutants and all the... It's not the strongest army in the world, but it's a ton of fun to play. It's got a lot of flavor.
Yeah, because even in 3rd edition, it was like, oh yeah, here's a rogue psyker. They have 5 wounds.
Yeah.
The most you were getting off any other character was 3.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's going down hard.
They're surprisingly like that psyker does a lot of work sometimes, and there's definitely some like clear choices as to which is better and which isn't. For those who don't know, like the 3rd edition Witch Hunters Codex had a full army, second army in it. No, it's not the most fleshed out, but it's like it's like a mutant and a rogue psyker and kind of dissidents. It's sort of like a chaos rebellion.
Yeah, the whole intention was someone will take whatever army you want and just add in a couple of these freaky characters. And that is who the Witch Hunters are actually after. They don't want to fight the Dark Angels. They want to fight this one dude that's advising them.
And I always wanted to see a full army like that. Like a full, like rebellion army, which is why I also collect Genestealer Cultists, because they're kind of pretty much
and
that,
now
but with a different
people
twist.
know why I invited you on the channel.
Yeah.
It's so nice to have, well, someone who's like, oh yeah, I collect Sisters and Genestealer Cult. I tried it as a poll to see, is the Von Carmian Sisters to Genestealer Cult pipeline actually real? Are people going from one to the other or vice versa? Like 6% of people are, so...
They're two very niche armies, I think. They're two very, very niche armies. And so it's like the Goldilocks zone, just the exact right two armies to be collecting. I think there's almost like a thematic similarity between the Sisters of Battle and the Genestealer Cultists in a way. I don't know what that is.
I keep trying to find it. It's like, is it like having to use special abilities like, oh, Genestealer Cult use ambush and shenanigans. Battle Sisters are like, God did it. That's our special shenanigan.
Well, I like to think of it as, one side is the rebellion and the other side puts down the rebellion, very
so
brutally.
You do have both sides of it, so yeah, they're in the same environment. It works.
Exactly. Although, in fairness, it's kind of cheating because I do have I have an army, a lot of armies. Because when you're playing Warhammer for long enough, you sort of end up picking up. Yeah. So I do have I've got Genestealers, I got Sisters of Battle, but I have Dark Eldar as well. They've always been one of my.
I have Dark Eldar as well.
Because they're and funnily, I don't have a Space Marine army, or at least I didn't until I
got bullied into it.
Yeah, I got bullied into it by the internet. But it was 20 years I've been playing this game, resisting all calls.
Whereas I just picked them up as they're in the starter box set. So you get a Space Marine army that way.
See, I have a friend who's really into Space Marines, so they would always take that side of the box.
That's theirs.
Yeah, exactly. And that always really worked out for me. And what I discovered was Space Marines are really easy to paint. They're really, really easy to paint.
When you get to Deathwatch, black spray is your friend, and then you paint one arm silver. After that, they actually get quite colourful because all of the different shoulder pads for all the different chapters, you can add little fetishes and cloaks and talismans and things to represent them. And so you look at a squad and it's like, oh yeah, I can actually make a yellow squad, a red squad, and a blue squad, depending on all the different chapters that I've got.
It's like a rainbow army, right? You've got a different kind of...
You could have the Rainbow Warriors.
Yeah, there you go. That rocks. And you can kind of give a little bit of a spotlight to all these sort of lesser known chapters and things.
Well, yeah, that sounds you don't have to do the 9 main Successor Legion chapters.
And now they're getting a little bit of a glow up with being part of this Agents of the Imperium.
Yeah, glow up's maybe not the right term Deathwatch players will use. I mean, Battle Sisters players are super happy about the new battle force that's been revealed. You get your Battle Sisters, as does everything, but you get an Immolator, which is hard to find in so many places. An Acolyte Squad is one of the kill teams, and really hard to find. You get your Preacher, and then you also get some Shotgun Dudes, which are whatever.
It almost feels better than the actual Sisters of Battle force that we saw.
Well, I think it's better than the army box, which was 15 flying ladies and an exorcist. If not for the exorcist, then I would say it's terrible.
They should have swapped them around. It should have been an Immolator in that box because it's meant to be a fast, aggressive force. And the Exorcist should have been in the Ordo Hereticus one. What's going on? What's happening?
Oh, well, I've got to have the transport, because it's presumed, and maybe by the time this video actually comes out, that you can add a dedicated transport when you requisition a unit from another army. So it'll be, your Battle Line Sisters of Battle unit is your one choice, and also you may have a dedicated transport for them.
Honestly, I'm not expecting much. I'm kind of expecting them to be a little bit janky because they always are.
Don't know if they'll work as a faction.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried. So my issue with bringing them back, right? As much as I love them and they were the first army I ever started with, I've been burned here before. I'm concerned that they're going to be a bit like the Harlequins, where they get this codex, in 10th edition. And 11th edition, you never hear about them again. So if you go all in...
Demonkin, anyone?
be warned, anyone out there who's thinking about going all in on Ordo Hereticus, like it's a scary thought, you know. It's a lot of money to spend.
But that's always been the problem with Deathwatch. It's like you don't actually have units you could buy. You cobble them together from 4 other kits and leave half the models still in the box.
I would like them just to commit to this idea of the Inquisition being a faction and just taking Grey Knights and Deathwatch and just smushing them in. I feel like once the Custodes came out, the Grey Knights stopped having such a great like design space to exist within, which was like better Space Marines, you know?
Custodes probably should have just been the ones that are as an agent. Because why are they leaving the palace in force?
I'm very I am outspoken in a lot of Warhammer issues. I'm outspoken on this one as well. I don't think they should be a faction. They should be like a character model. You know, like there should be like one Custodes.
There's 3 of them.
Yeah, or a unit.
That's your super elite unit that you can have as an agent unit.
Exactly. It's the skilling gets a bit funky. But then I'm of the opinion that like I think the Chaos as a faction should be mostly cultists, and then the occasional kind of Chaos Space Marine kind of acting like a CIA operative in contra, you know, like down in like South America, like training the guerrilla forces to fight the local government. That should be the Chaos Space Marine, like in there kind of training revolutionaries and how to use guns.
We're saying CIA, but that's also how like Britain and France fought a lot of the colonial wars. It's like, France is invading Madagascar. Great, send 5 British guys to train the locals.
Exactly, and I think that that's the way Chaos should operate. I think that would have been but it's just the scale of the game is too high for that.
Is how they can operate now. They have a lot more Chaos cultist options. We have the Accursed cultists, which are the mutants. You have your Traitor Guard. You have your cultist mobs. That's at least 3 different units and a detachment to make the cultists work.
Yeah.
With 1 Dark Apostle. Oh, I'm still taking Chaos Hordes. Just here's my models, which is a lot like the Witch Hunters Adversaries, where here's all the cultists.
Bring it right. Yeah.
Pushing them forward. Well, I got into a little bit of the Imperial Armor books when they did the Renegades for the Siege of Vrax. I didn't get those models because I was like, oh, look, Mantic does very similar models. I'll get them instead. So there's always don't buy from Games Workshop if you want silly things. There are cultists elsewhere. There are orcs elsewhere. So many other places.
Well, I mean, so I've got a friend. He has that adversary force, but he runs that force as Chaos as well. Right, so he has them as like cultist, and he has a bunch of the Chaos kind of cultist models and the accursed cultists and stuff.
Because you could run them as Chaos Space Marines, that Codex, or Imperial Guard if you wanted.
Yeah,
or Genestealer Cult.
And he actually uses a lot of the sort of Stargrave cultist mixed with the Stargrave scavengers, which is where I recently did a video kind of kit bashing together some Fraterus militia for my Sisters of Battle force. And those 2 kits like go together really well, and they make some weird looking guys, like, you know, robes with the gas masks and guns and things, and they work perfectly.
Did you add in
for like
flagellants as well? Empire
and flagellants. Oh yeah, because you know you gotta get some of the whips in there. You know what I'm saying?
So I'm only a little bit different. My battle system novitiates use a lot of the Cawdor models, but I have the metal ones rather than the plastic ones. So there's your downtrodden Fraternus militia being represented on the battlefield, and my flagellants, my arco-flagellants, are Empire flagellants.
Yeah, awesome. I feel like I honestly feel like instead of Sisters Novitiates, we could have just had Fraterus militia, that in that design space. But
it very much works. But they're okay as a kill team. I'm fine with Novice Sisters, but when you got auto guns or auto pistols and knives with a couple of flamers and some random banners, it does feel Fraternus military. So
yeah, it doesn't feel like, to me, Sisters of Battle are power armor bolters, the fire and melding.
Maybe some Repentia. They've kind of grown on me. Now that they're wearing clothes, sort of.
I used to never like them, but then I've grown to love them, you know, and I just really, really dig it. I think as they've gotten worse in the rules, I've
that's when you like them more.
I like them more, yeah.
Oh, see, that's how I was kind of feeling about Genestealer Cult Metamorphs. Like, they were utterly terrible in the Index, and I was like, I'm gonna keep playing them. I'm gonna find how they should work. And then the Codex made them better, so it was fine.
Well, the Genestealer Cultist Codex has been probably one of the, like, I mean, we're just going to settle, like, the business model decisions, like, off to one side, all, like, the employee stuff. In terms of, like, just decisions from Games Workshop, it's been one of the most perplexing and, like, frustrating parts. One of the most recent things that they have done is just the way they did the codex. I just feel like it was such a huge disappointment. The Genestealer Cult. You've seemed pretty positive, pretty up on it.
I am, I'm sunshine and light, so as long as I don't go out in it, I will keep the Genestealer Cult fun alive.
Yes.
Because, well, if I don't, my channel dies. If I'm like, they're rubbish, sell your models, get out. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
I found there is a lot of ways we can make them work. There's a lot of fun to be had. It's just a bit more of a struggle. And since my last video was, oh yeah, Battle Sisters, going from Battle Sisters from Genestealer Cult, it is such a big difference on the tabletop.
It seems wild. So with Genestealer Cult, I think 10th edition, at the beginning of the edition, they were probably some of the funnest games I've had in like modern Warhammer in a really long time. At the beginning of 10th.
The very start, where they had always coming back battle
with the
line.
recursion. And the reason was, okay, so everyone was saying it was too strong. I don't think it was too strong.
No.
I think it's one of those things where players needed to learn how to play specifically against Genestealer Cultists, and because Genestealer Cultists are so rare, people weren't learning how to play against them. And
you play them once and it seems OP. Or you hear the rules, like, oh, they get units back, and then you realise, it's only on a random dice roll. And
and you've got a marker, and you can get rid of that marker. Like, you can stop them coming back if you just play around them. And I think that's what people needed to do, and they needed to change their lists a little and include more fast attack options. And I think that was cool that mobility was being rewarded a little bit. But I love them because thematically it felt like they were a revolution. Like I was playing against Space Marines, getting, my dudes were all getting destroyed, but they were coming back, and it felt like it was like, right, workers rise up, we're taking the surface, yes, do this. And it felt really, really cool.
They do feel like civilians trying to fight, for sure.
Yeah, and they have the firepower for that. And then they changed it so that it was like a role, and that kind of took a lot of the fun out for me, honestly, because it changed what should be just a really fun faction rule into a real feels bad moment whenever you didn't make the roll, which would happen.
Which was most of the time.
Yeah. It felt like therefore you were playing with like no faction rule at all.
That's
and there was already so
very
much
how I feel. The video that I just done earlier this week was that is basically a line in it. I know you haven't seen it because it isn't out yet at the time of recording, so I'm glad that we feel the same way. My other feeling on the faction rule at the start was I didn't like it because it made the game take far longer than it needed to. If I was losing, my blips are disappearing, my units are disappearing, I still lose. If I was winning, then I have all these units back that I need to move and shoot and do things with, and it's just adding momentum to a victory, which was going to happen anyway.
True. That's fair. Although I will say, I will be honest, I think that Warhammer works better at lower points levels.
Very
around 1,000, 1,200. So I felt that at that points level, it wasn't too bad. I could see that at 2,000 it would be way too many.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my local club to go down from 2,000 after they were realizing, it's like 10 p.m. and we're still on turn 3. It's like, go home, get out.
That is a Warhammer problem. That is a Warhammer problem, though. Let's be honest.
But 1,500 points, people are playing that more. I don't know if it's just my fandom, because it's like you get the fans that you're rewarded with, the ones you cultivate are the ones that come back. Like 1,250 points is really common now, and a lot of more tournaments are doing that, and you play 4 games in a day of 1,250 points, and you get them done. And it's tactical and it makes sense.
I'm not sure how much, in terms of balance, I'm not sure if 2,000 points is better because you get redundancies and things, but I just find it funner. It's just funner, it's just quicker, it's easier to play, it's more reasonable to play and ask someone to play a game.
You don't forget as many rules, you're not going, I just won't do that shooting attack because it'll probably do nothing. Yeah, I know people who are just like, here's one model moved, and then they pick the others up and drop them in a pile behind the others, and what that unit is now. Because that's how fast you need to play to do 2,000 points in 3 hours.
Warhammer, I know people don't, people don't talk about this often, but Warhammer's a pretty complicated game. There's a lot going on in this thing.
Even if it's simplified, but that's just because there's lots of common, special rules. It's not that they all have the same special rules, and they still have an absurd number of rules commentary things to come out. You're someone who's been playing for a while, so do you often get rules from previous editions? Do you mix up
what the latest rules are?
Only if I'm like, I remember how this works and I haven't re-looked at it. So it's relatively rare. Once I get into a new edition enough times, I mean, we've all gone through the codex rotation of this used to work this way, now we have an army book or codex, so it works this way instead. You get used to it after a few games.
See, I have this, so I also play at the same time as Warhammer 40k 10th edition. So I play a lot of war games, but one of the ones I also play is called Pro Hammer, which is like the kind of all the editions of Warhammer before 8th edition.
Right.
Kind of mixed into this like remastered
all of
edition.
Them.
Yeah, so you can play any codex pre 8th edition against any other codex, and it's all the universal special rules have all been like updated and rebalanced and things. Right. So everything is it's kind of like it's like Warhammer 40k the greatest hits, like kind of remastered.
So I need to know if it has vehicle facings.
It has vehicle facings, yes.
Oh,
yeah, it's got that. Yes. It's got all the classics, you know, and they've been readjusted and things. It's a ton of fun. I really enjoy it. But what that means is that I'm playing like old school Warhammer and also modern Warhammer.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it gets a little bit like, you know, you get those two things like they cross over quite a bit.
So what do you think about the current release schedule for the 10th edition stuff? Is it too fast, not fast enough? Because I know we've had, you know, Codex has come out and that's kind of fine. It's nice that everyone gets a Codex in the edition, which we didn't have in like 3rd, 4th edition. But so many rules updates.
I've always disliked the entire like model the Games Workshop have done, where they, especially in modern Warhammer, where they still focus everything around the Codex, and they give factions like a spotlight 1 month, and then they get 1 month, and that's it, and then it's done.
Yeah, that's painful when you're doing, you know, Genestealers, Battle Sisters, and Deathwatch all at the same time, who get their Codex all at the same time. But it also means things like Imperial Guard are desperate for a new detachment. Yeah. They got a full rework, well, a kind of rework in how their lethal hits work, and people were pleased with that. Otherwise, I'm seeing Imperial Guard people looking at Brood Brothers and thinking, I might just play Brood Brothers now because I've got nothing else.
I think one of the coolest things that Games Workshop did this edition was release that new Dark Eldar detachment. And it added so much vibrancy to that faction again. And I really feel like they should just be doing that. Like, they don't need to do a codex. They should have released the index, had everyone get like one detachment, and then spread detachments out throughout the year so that, you know, every month or two, you know, a faction was getting like what, you know, like Space Marines would get a detachment, Tyranids would get a detachment, Imperial Guard would get a detachment, and then next month, you know, like Dark Eldar would get a detachment, Sisters of Battle would get a detachment, and spread out the kind of love and spread out the model releases as well throughout the year instead of just spotlighting one faction. Here's your batch, next.
Well, yeah, because we got the kill team for Votann, but then no extra rules for Votann. It's just like, here's your one unit. You now use that in your one detachment.
Yeah, and I get why whenever codexes made sense, you know, like 2006, whenever it made sense to do a book and for you to buy a book and all this stuff.
Yes, in the shops. Internet is slow and you can't download a PDF in less than 3 hours.
It made sense then, but I think they really need to modernize, like how they encapsulate the entire business model of Warhammer. The entire idea, because they started off really well this edition, just releasing the indexes, and I really like indexes. But then it's like, then they started releasing codices again, and it's like, why are you doing this? Why?
And then they update the codexes digitally.
My personal opinion, a codex should be like an annual where it's literally just like the greatest hits. Like here's like here's like your stats and stuff, sure, but it's mostly about hobbying. It's like a book, art, lore. It like celebrates
it used
the faction,
to be. Here's how to paint the things. Why you should collect the army. This is what they do on the table. Yeah. Here's a diorama.
Here's how to kit bash. Here's how to kit bash your models, you know?
Here's the 1997 Battle of Big Tooth River in the Orc Codex, a massive diorama.
And I think this is really frustrating because they sort of went halfway to this by making each codex a hardcover and more expensive. And they should have just like went all the way, made it a kind of premium sort of item, but not mandatory to buy. And that would have been like a much better way to sell the product because people would still buy them. Like, I don't know if Games Workshop know this, but you can get all the rules for every faction, codex or not, online if you want it. Yes. Like, you can do that, and people still buy the codex. So I feel like if they did that, they just embrace that fact. I think it would be better for everybody.
Well, yeah, we would have rules that work and digital and could be updated constantly.
Yeah.
Maybe with their app. Maybe they could even implement their own balance patches into the actual documents, which they just haven't done. So the core rules still has the old movement values and the way movement worked, even though they've done a rules update.
And in such a world, they could include the points of a unit on the war scroll. That would be lovely. On like the battle sheet, that would be nice.
Yeah, the way that like Warpedia does it. So it's there.
Yeah. I just find it very, very, very frustrating that they haven't like embraced this fact. But that's Games Workshop, right? Like it feels like they've been dragged kicking and screaming into actually putting up PDFs at all. So
yeah, everyone else modernizes and they'll drag their heels and follow when it stops being the most optimal way of doing things when they have such a monopoly on wargaming.
Yeah, and I find that really frustrating because in a lot of ways they act like they're a small company in a lot of ways, like their kind of ambitions and their scope sometimes. Well, sometimes it's way too big. Like Warhammer Plus, it's like, what are you doing? You're not Amazon. What are you doing? You
are not an animation studio. You need to hire all these people from scratch and go for it. And
but in other ways, they're very small. You know, like they think very small. They're like, we're going to release a book for this faction. What are you doing? Like, you know, you've got like an international audience of like, you know, so many people trying to play this game. Like,
and now you got to release that book in 20 different languages.
I find it so frustrating. And as always, I feel like I love Warhammer. I really do. But I do not love Games Workshop, and their business model actively frustrates me. I would say almost on a daily basis. If it's like looking up the app, like I was trying to build an army in the Age of Sigmar app recently, and you literally go into the app, go into the unit, click open the like a data sheet. So you've got to click another thing to get into the actual data sheet. Click the abilities tab. Then there's like 3 abilities. You got to click each ability individually to open it up. And it's like, why? Why have you done this? It's like no one actually plays the goddamn game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe the people who design the app don't play the game.
Well, I think they must, right? They must.
Maybe. Maybe it's just user and product user isn't Games Workshop's thing, which we know from how they design their kits. So it's no longer here's a torso piece and a legs piece, guess how they go together, you don't need instructions. It's 14 different pieces which will include like a thigh and the back of a boot, the front toe and a knee, but joined up by like the calf muscle, and that's it.
I heard it described as it feels like you're reassembling someone's smashed miniatures.
Yeah, and they haven't broken along the convenient lines.
Yeah, and you're trying to like rebuild them now. And so I have been playing Age of Sigmar with the launch of the new edition, and the models in that are the worst for it, especially Heat Knights of Slanesh. And it is the worst army in the world, like for building. Like it's actively unfun. I really enjoy building models, but I don't enjoy building those. I just don't enjoy building them because you don't get to make any decisions. There's no like actual posing that you do.
It's just, you put glue on a thing and then it's done and now it's apparently yours. Yeah, I see what you mean about it's like you're rebuilding someone else's broken model.
The thing about it is, people say that you can continue to kit bash Warhammer, and you can, but it's really hard to do it with Warhammer kits. Like, I don't want to actually have to saw off arms that have already been like pre-glued together and things. Like, it used to be so much easier when you would have the body and the head and the arm separate.
You kind of have to build the model and then break the model apart and then do it. Which is why I like the older kits from like 2013, 14, 15. So the Space Wing Tactical Squad, the Genestealer Cult Acolytes, they're great for it.
I feel like there was a golden age of models that we just we never realized it at the time. We didn't know. We didn't know how good we had it.
It was going in the right direction. And would continue to.
It was the old style of building kits, but just better, which made a lot of sense. And I'm gonna be real. I think that the best model kit that Games Workshop have ever done was the Kabbalite Warriors. I think that they are the perfect mesh of looking good, looking great poses, and also being very, very kit fragile, and fun to build. Yeah,
they're so fragile though.
They are fragile, but that comes with the territory. It's Dark Eldar,
yes, I know. You put them. The models are fragile on and off the tabletop.
Yeah, don't step on them at night. It's the old classic. But yeah, those models
easy to paint. I just remember them being entirely edge highlighting. You spray them black, edge highlight whatever you want, white, then edge highlight in the actual color you want.
I just went over them with a contrast pen and just boom, done. Like just the green or whatever. I can't remember, like goblin green or something, and just
it's got to be goblin green. You can't just put it just on the base.
No.
So yeah, we're glad that they got a detachment. So they're probably one of the few armies that have had a decent like release schedule this year. Then we got the big new, like the new rules update and balance patch in June 2024, which feels a bit like a 10.5, but with additions being 3 years, it's like a 10.33 edition of 40k.
Yeah.
I'm seeing it as among the player base, a little bit of like a here's your watershed moment. It's after this, some people are just not going to play because they're not keeping up with the constant rules release cycle. So they don't know about all these things. It confuses them that it's there and not there on the app and not there in the PDFs.
So I think that people often turn this into like a competitive versus casual players kind of conversation, right? Where it's almost like, oh, to satisfy the competitive players, like Games Workshop's doing this thing and it alienates casual players. But I think that casual players want a balanced game as well. Like no one wants to be in their house playing a game, against their friend and like on the kitchen table, and then it just turns out that their army is just way better. So I think it's really important that Games Workshop do update the game. And I think that people wouldn't mind the update so much if they hadn't felt like they'd spent like a whole ton of money on a massive like rule book to kind of get the rules and things.
Yeah.
Or
I know what you mean with that expensive price. And the same for like the Leviathan mission deck, which isn't that different from the Pariah Nexus mission deck. So many of the mission cards are just the same.
Yeah, which to me felt like a huge missed opportunity where they could have just done like a new deck, made it themed to the Necrons or whatever it is they wanted it to be themed to, and then you could just like mix up the decks and build your own like
kind of as an app. Just here's your game app, which is an option, but that means it's digital and you're not selling a physical product.
And they would have made it a subscription or something, which I'm really vehemently against. I don't like the idea of subscriptions. Not the game do this as well. I don't like it at all. Like where they kind of lock. They do the good thing of like making all the rules like available digitally, and you're like, okay, cool. And then they put a subscription fee in front of it, and you're like, no, you misunderstood. Like even if it's like £2, I don't want to have to pay a ton, to keep playing. Like I do like that about the Codex. I will say that you buy it and then you have it, and that's it. It belongs to you now, and you can just keep it. The problem is that you can't play with anybody outside your like family because everybody wants you to play with the updated, like the most recent thing.
I mean, balance, I think, is maybe just something we need to stop pretending it can exist. Because if you look at like, the meta stuff, it's up and down all the time. We know it can be really unbalanced and only a little bit unbalanced. I don't think there's ever a time when it's like, yes, this is perfectly fine for everyone.
No, like, I mean, the game has never been balanced. And I don't think that Warhammer really can be balanced. I think that the core system of the game, of the you go, I go system, is just always going to inherently be kind of rough. Like, I get to shoot you first, man. Like, there's no way. Like, there's no way you can come back from that. So it's kind of a bit frustrating that way. And I guess, like, what is the point of balance in the first place? And I think it's because there's this idea that balance will make the game funner, right? Like the idea that if it's fair,
is a fun game.
It's a fun game. I do think that to some extent, but
it's difficult without it just being symmetrical.
Yeah, and you don't want it to be symmetrical because I think that so much of the joy of this game is in the options and in the
flavor, the different styles.
Yeah.
Oh, everyone thinking my army is toughness 3. I have no choice in that.
Yeah, and that's actually, I mean, that's honestly what kind of frustrates me about Games Workshop kind of releasing new factions and focusing on the Space Marines so much, where it kind of takes a little bit of that fun out for me. See, I feel like a little bit of a weirdo because I'm always playing like the Toughness 3 faction, with like Armor C of 5+, or, even 3+ with the Sisters. Whereas the vast majority of people, I think, in the game in Warhammer are running around with like Toughness 4.
Well, some of them are Toughness 5 because you got like Votan, which at least have a profile that's slightly different from a Space Marine. Now the Space Marines have 2 wounds. All of them, and they're Toughness 5, but they're similar to Orcs, but they're not quite Orcs because they shoot rather than fight in close combat, but despite being shooting, they're not Tau, even though they have a 4+ save. It's getting it, where do you fit everything to be, this is a distinct profile?
It's tough. It is tough. Like, I would prefer fewer factions that feel very distinct from one another than lots of factions that feel kind of like broad, like, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
Kind of like, it's why I've always preferred like fantasy and sci-fi games to like historical games. Because historicals have that problem where they're like, you can play 20 different factions. They're all a guy with a spear.
I can be the Prussians, I can be the French, I can be the British, all of which feel just generic line infantry columns.
+1 morale. Oh boy, awesome. Very different. What a new experience.
Yeah. Horus Heresy.
I'm not interested in Horus Heresy at all. Like, people are like, "Oh, you missed the old school Warhammer. Like, you should play Horus Heresy." And I'm like, I don't want to play Space
7th
Marines.
edition.
Yeah. I don't want to play Space Marines. I have no interest in playing Space Marines. I already played too many Space Marines in 40k, frankly.
Well, yeah, Chaos Space Marines. I've got Space Marines, Deathwatch. There's 3.
Yeah, but they are all Space Marines. Custodies are Space Marines. I don't care what anybody says. They're just really strong Space Marines. Yeah, they're just bigger Space Marines.
Grey Knights are Psychic Space Marines.
Yeah. Honestly, hot take, I think they should just get rid of Space Marines. This isn't a very good commercial decision, but I think they should just get rid of Space Marines. I don't think they fit the setting very well.
They do seem to want to slim down the range a bit. If they're cutting down the number of Deathwatch units we have, they keep being like, oh, well, these Firstborn will keep, but the other Firstborn will go away. Like,
right.
Yeah. Can we just keep tactical squads, please? I don't need intercessors. We have them in the tactical squad.
And that's really frustrated me, is not necessarily because people, I remember there was like all that drama about,
massive drama.
changing.
It has not died down, really.
It has not. It's
just become a generation thing. Were you around for the real Space Marines, or are you new Space Marines?
I don't mind Primaris. I feel like they missed the boat to do a lot more interesting stuff with the Imperium. If they were going to change some stuff, they should have went like crazy, I think, and done like in a civil war and stuff. But anyway, so I feel like they, aside from that, I think the move to Primaris was fine, because I think the true scale Space Marines were kind of needed. Like, it's something everybody always wanted. But one of the kind of like the little side things I never even noticed at the time was that they made Space Marines a lot more boring, because tactical Space Marines were always really cool in the sense that they felt like very like we're equipped to deal with any situation.
They're versatile.
Yeah, really super versatile. And that was actually like a big element of the Space Marine faction, that they were very kind of jack of all trades. Like, they could really handle anything.
And they kind of had to, because of the way the Imperium was. Oh, we can't just have specialized troops. We need some people who can do everything and be everywhere. Now we just need to get them there. That's the problem.
And it made sense, because Space Marines were meant to be like a very rare force, and they were sort of implemented like special forces almost, where they'd be the spearhead, the tip of the spear, And I thought that was really cool. And if you wanted specialized units, you would go for Eldar. Like, that was the Eldar thing.
Well, yeah, so now it's like, here's your Melta Space Marines, here's your Plasma Space Marines.
Yeah, and I am not a fan of it. It really feels like an excuse just to sell kits. Because they're the same models.
Yes.
They're the exact same models. And it's insane. Like, they're reusing poses, they're reusing like the same stances and things, but they're selling them as completely different model kits, as if they're new. And I think the most egregious was the jump pack kind of captain is identical to the sergeant of a jump pack squad of the Primaris, like whatever they call them. And it's just wild.
Assault intercessors with jump packs.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, yes, of course.
Just call them assault marines. We know they're assault marines.
Yeah, assault marines. I think that's been a really frustrating element of the Primaris. I do appreciate like the models in the sense that it looks cool when my Imperial Guard go up against them now, because my Imperial Guard seem really wee and small.
I put
and I like that.
Cultists against the new Infernus Marines. It's like my head comes up to like your chest. What's up with that?
That's so bone. Yeah, and it looks cool on the table. Like, that element of it, it's a great spectacle.
So just true scale Marines would have been nice. Hey, maybe now we can do we're moving into the next millennium. We're going to actually have to train up these Primaris dudes to be that specialized whatever thing. Because the lore is struggling in the Space Marine section. It's like, what do you go after you're a scout? Well, you don't really... Well, hang on. The 10th company is now an actual company because it has the Phobos Marines in it. So the 9th company, well, it's... Maybe for the moment got Devastator squads, maybe. There's one other missile squad, but does everyone have to go to the missile squad? You don't see the missile squad everywhere else, so you're not being folded into a tactical squad. What do they do? Their lore doesn't quite make sense. They figured out the first company is still there. That's about it.
Honestly, I have no idea. I couldn't tell you. But anyway, I mean, just replace Space Marines with Sisters of Battle. Sisters of Battle are like the quintessential 40k faction in the game. They are gothy. They are super evil. Like, they should be the main Imperium force, like our special forces. Done.
Yeah. So we've got Sisters. You play Genestealer Cult. You also play Praetorian Imperial Guard.
Praetorians? No, I do. I have an Imperial Guard force, but I don't play Praetorians. That would be wild, though, if I did.
I have the Pith Helmet ones. I was just
wow.
We have so many armies that match up.
In common.
How very
I see.
specific is it that they match up?
That would be crazy, though. Like, imagine I hadn't said, "Oh yeah, my Praetorian. How'd you know?" That would have been absolutely wild.
And at that point, I can turn off the camera. It was me and you were the same person all along, just recording the conversation at 2 different times.
Yes. Face reveal stream, right? That would have been so good. But yeah, no, Imperial Guard as well. Imperial Guard are cool. They've always felt like, I mean, they are just stolen from Starship Troopers. But it's always kind of, it's always kind of felt like that, you know? It's always felt like they feel very like weirdly modern in a lot of ways, even though they're like kind of 1945 style tactics, you know. So to have them be a little bit grungier, I kind of dig that. I do like that.
Whereas I'm thinking, if you're gonna die, you die gloriously with a bright red jacket and standing in front of the 1945. Well, let's go back to 1879. I think.
So I think the biggest shame of this edition has been or was it last edition, where Guard now are mixed regiments. I do not like this change at all. I don't mind named characters being like that, but I hate like Death Corps of Krieg having their own rules, and then Gideon Infantry Squad having their own rules. It should just be a generic infantry squad, and then you can build up your own regiment and your own, you know, custom one like Praetorians or.
We have to hope that the generic infantry squad sticks around, since they're not selling a kit which has a heavy weapon in it.
I'm worried. I don't think it will. Like, I'm really concerned for it. I hope it does, but I'm worried, you know?
It's what I have. I have like 4 of them, and I don't have to get like another squad just so I have 6 heavy weapons that I can then split into a heavy weapon team that are on mine are on various bases, because the missiles came on 2 25mm bases for the Praetorians. And then the heavy bolters, I've got them on a 40mm base because it didn't come with a base because it fits. And then 60mm bases because that's what it was. And now it's 50mm bases.
Yes.
Yeah, bases are one of those things that I get unpopular with, because people are like, oh, WYSIWYG, it's fine. You know, a little bit of difference is not a problem. Everyone's okay with that. And I'm like, so I have Genestealers on 25mm bases. I have Battle Sisters on 25mm bases. And that's when people are like, oh, you should rebase. You really should.
No, you must. No. Yeah. I mean, it was legal at the time when the models were released. You got those bases.
It depends which like rule set you're going under. If you're just like, well, I stopped caring about base sizes when they released the Hospitaller on a 50mm base, and like, here's a diorama piece. Also, that is the legal base of the model, which doesn't fit with any of the other Battle Sisters. Like, you didn't design the rules around it being this size. Don't be daft.
No, they did not. They weren't like, oh, well, this way I'll get a bigger bubble, you know, and then they'll be able to cover more. No, they did not. They were not. They were like, I want to do this sick diorama piece and sell it for £35. How do I do this?
Yeah.
Like, but that's another trend that kind of annoys me. Like the priest, the priest model into the Sister Battle. Like Sister Battle got like we got 2
Fortress.
new. Yeah, both from Blackstone Fortress.
Both from like 8 years ago.
New, yeah, £30 new. And that's kind of frustrating. And I think they did the same thing with Chaos, where they took a cultist model. This is just a cultist, just a cultist guy with a flamethrower, and they were like, that'll be £30, please. So they got to be careful with that, because if they do that enough time, people are going to start to realize that character models shouldn't cost more than any other model. They gotta be really careful. They're undermining their own.
People just never buy characters. Kit bash them, because it's gonna look so much better, and you get 10 characters that way.
Yeah, and for sisters, I think especially because we've got so many. Like,
and the Novitiate kit can build them all. You just need to not care about your Hospitaller being on a 50mm base, and you're sorted.
Maybe that's what they did. They were like, one guy brought it up. It's like, hey, wait a minute. We do all this.
This one trick will ruin exploiters everywhere.
I've got him. You know, sometimes it's really funny because I'll say stuff like that as a joke, and then like sometimes you'll be like, "Wait, did they actually? Were they actually that pernicious? Did they actually plan on that?"
It's like the rumor of, oh yeah, there's 2 codex teams, one that does good codexes and one that doesn't.
Yeah.
Or it's one's just there for the paycheck and one actually cares. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I don't think that there are two Codex teams. Like, I think that's just like an urban legend. But man, they really want to prove it right. Like, they're really trying hard to prove it right. Like, it's hard for me to argue against
one
it.
team. They don't afford.
Yeah.
They don't give the money for two teams, and they just have to get two projects done in the few months, so they don't have time to dedicate to both codexes. So one gets the priority and is good, and that explains why there's 5 detachment for Genestealer Cults, but poor units. So people were thinking the sisters, oh, they got 4, and one of them's this weird penitent thing. Oh, they'll be the bad codex, and the reverse is, in most people's opinion, true.
Yeah, and admittedly, at least the sisters codex is pretty good.
Have you played much with it recently?
I haven't. It's really sad. Like, I really want to. I've built a lot of armies using it. Still haven't gotten the game in, and I haven't. I want to do the Bringers of Flame. Like, I've been looking forward to this for like a year, 2 years, and I still haven't gotten it.
I saw like the Bringers of Flame coming when I did a whole prediction on what could the Battle Sisters detachments look like, and I was like, what if they just did a Space Marine one? What if literally just that? And they gave us that, and then they did.
I know
that specific one.
Hey, we got it first, okay? Screw the Salamander. These people are like, I don't play Space Marines, I play the Blood Angels. You play Space Marines, okay? That it's the same goddamn thing. It's just a different
Space
color.
Marines in the Bloody Rose detachment. That's all that is.
Like, yeah, exactly. It's like someone telling me they're playing the Green Power Ranger. Like, okay, you're a Power Ranger, I get it. Like
the law behind the flute. Think of the Green Power Ranger's flute. He can play that through his mask. That's the power.
Look, the Salamanders stole this this entire thing, like the whole fire thing. Like, that was Sisters of Battle first. Okay, the
Blood Angels have been stealing our stuff. Black Templars have been stealing our stuff. With the whole zealotry.
Right. I'm telling you, like, get rid of them. I said, get rid of them. Just get rid of them. Be like, no, I don't think so. Sisters of Battle. They have this. This is their space. No take. You don't get to take it.
And it could be like Warhammer Fantasy, where the only Space Marines are Chaos Space Marines, and they're a small
I think that would be badass. I imagine a world where that was the case. How sick would that setting be? Where like Chaos actually felt threatening and scary because they had like the Space Marines from the old ancient Millennia War, the Horus Heresy. That would be really cool.
Really powerful. That's how Warhammer the Old World was. Like, well, they have super armored elites, veterans that have killed monsters across the waste. We have Jim the peasant farmer with a pointy stick and like his 19 mates.
And a gun. One of us has a gun,
One of us has a gun. In some of the provinces, there are guns.
Yeah. But yeah, no, like that sounds really cool, I think. But yes, so Bringers of Flame, I really want to play it. Now, I know everyone's been like super hyped on Bringers of Flame because it's just on the face of it, like so good, like +1 strength.
Yeah,
within 12 inches
into the Battle Sisters playstyle. Close range firepower.
Yeah, I want to advance on the enemy. Like, I do this every game. I'm like, I load up on flamethrowers because because I'm playing Sisters of Battle. Like, I think that low key, I think sleeper hit is probably like the one where there's the detachment where you can take the 2 miracle dice,
Army of Faith,
or the one that is the index one. I actually really like. I still like the Hollow Mark. I think that they're really good.
It's gone from. It was strong enough to keep us at about 50% win rate with a not quite working properly codex. Now we have a fully working codex.
Oh, yeah.
Hallowed Martyrs can go, but most people are looking at Bringers of Flame and being like, it's different, so I'm going to try it. It's not just the index again.
But I miss the miraculous intervention, bringing back the Palatine and the sword. It
was the Blade of St. Eleanor, which has now been renamed to Through Suffering Sacrifice. That's what it's called now. That's the old Blade of St. Eleanor, because the Blade of St. Eleanor's namesake is now in the Army of Faith and gives you precision attacks, which I love, because I love stabbing heretics in the face.
Yes, that's fun. I like a little spice of hero hammer, not all in on here, but I like the occasional little like character who can just carve their way through, just have this little bit of a hero ball. And the Palatine just feels so good with that weapon, and then being able to res her again whenever she dies. And
Divine Intervention comes back, does it all again.
It's just such a fun, engaging playstyle. Like the Codex, I think, is just a massive hit in terms of even just fun, not in terms of power.
Like, look at all the things I can do. My whole thing recently was, what if we had Bringers of Flame, but we just forgot the transports? How well does that work? And it turns out it works really, really well.
Nice. It's a lot of fun. I played a lot of the Index. And honestly, I was enjoying the index. Like, I was really having fun with the index. So I was kind of
eventually-
worried when the Codex.
I eventually got tired of the whole martyrdom thing. I was like, that's
Yeah.
not how I play Sisters, and the people who comment on my videos are like, I don't like it when my ladies die. I like them being alive and killing heretics.
Oh, I you know, it's. I mean, they're having a ball. They're killing heretics. They love it. They're you know, they die in the service of it. It's all good. They get to join the Emperor in heaven. You know, probably.
Probably, yeah.
so I really enjoyed the index. I was kind of worried only. This is like another thing I don't like about the Codex. It's scary when there's a Codex coming because it's like, is this going to ruin my army? Like, like. I'm enjoying the game right now. Like, is this going to actually like ruin and scary and huge is scary? And for the Genestealer cultists, yes was the answer, because what I love about the Genestealers is I love shooting. I really like playing the guerrilla side of things, whereas it feels like with the new Codex, your options are melee. Like, you're really kind of incentivized to go in.
I mean, Host of Ascension is a bit of melee, quite a bit of shooting. If you want shooting, you need to have the Imperial Guard detachment, the Auxilia, for which you need Imperial Guard.
Yeah, and I have Imperial Guard, but I don't want to mix them. You know, like I like them being separate. I can be like a civilian. Yeah, you know, I like them being a civilian force and ragtag. It was sort of funny, you know, in a very dark way. Kind of the launch of the two codices like side by side, because I was so involved in both communities, and to see the responses online, you know, like even in like Reddit and like, you know, fan communities and Discords and stuff, people were like on the Sisters were so happy. They were so joyous. And then on the Genestealer, it was a lot of like cope, you know, it was like, well, maybe it's not, you know, but maybe it won't be that bad. Maybe, you know, we haven't seen everything yet. Yeah,
like, you know, I don't care if we can't make it work. I'm going to make it work, and you're going to watch the videos and enjoy it.
Obviously, great for content, right? Because now you got a lot of work to do. But
if any of the codexes come out, I have a lot of work to do. But the work never stops. I looked through my backlog recently. It's like I have 15 videos, half scripted, near ready to go. I just get through them.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's and also you're a vampire, so you gotta like suck all that blood and stuff, and you know, acquire like
Give me money for blood. That's what I tell to people. Here's the, you know, the Ko-fi links in the description.
I was really hoping with the Genestealer Cult Codex that they would address the faction rule, like that they would do something with it, and the fact that they didn't just felt like such a like, if you're not going to do it now, you know,
you're not going to do it this edition.
Yeah, it's not happening this edition, and that really sucks because I like 9th editions, like the blips, like the deployment and stuff like that. I like that.
Okay,
it felt thematic.
Okay. Yeah,
it felt thematic, and it at least it did something. Whereas
I found it time consuming after a while. It's like, I put all these blips down, right? You deployed, okay. Now sit there while I actually do my deployment.
And you've got all your models like on a tray, trying to figure out where to put them because the table is taken up by the game.
Oh, well, see, that was the benefit of mine, because I have the 2nd edition markers which have letters on them, A through to H. So I know that I'd written on my army sheet, this is number A, letter A. This is unit's going to go there, probably.
Clever. Like yeah. Okay. I love the old one, but then they kind of ruined it by making a roll, like an actual roll. What's your opinion on 10th edition overall? Do you think it's been a success or a failure? Do you think? And then that means you can make the title. No. Say it might have been a failure, and now you can make the title of this video. Warhammer 10th edition was a failure. So go ahead, say it.
Well, okay. Warhammer 10th edition needed some work. Looking over it, it was like, okay, I had 10 reasons why I liked it, 10 reasons I didn't like it. The ones where I didn't like it have just kind of fallen off. It wasn't that bad. The rules, I like having characters back in units. I like the way that keywords generally work. It's simple enough. I like detachment so much. I like that there's a slimming down of rules, a slimming down of stratagems. It's not, here's your codex with your 25 stratagems, learn them all, keep going. It's, you know, here's my 6. I just need to know these 6. That's it.
And honestly, I think that made the index sisters, like so much more fun for me, was that I just had those 6. And I would forget them as well. Like, even with just the 6, I'd forget I could do stuff, you know? So I think that was a much more manageable number.
and detachments. You don't have to color code your armies, and you don't have layers of rules. It's just you have a faction rule, you have a detachment rule. That's it. It isn't, oh yes, here's your army rule, here's your detachment rule, here's your extra army rules that we've added in over the edition to be like, here's how bolt guns work differently for Space Marines and combat squads and all of the rest of them. And then it's here's your detachment, which gives you two things. Also, to stop soup, here's your extra rule for if you're running just from this codex.
It got to be a bit much. Like I love a lot of flavor that gets added into the game, but it was too much before. I think like ninth edition was kind of like, it was just crazy. And it was really funny because it feels like 8th edition was like trying to wipe the slate clean, and then they just immediately just went to 11 again. They were like, back in, here we are again. You're like, what?
10th edition has at least kept it down, so that's good. And I do feel now I can switch between armies, and I don't have to relearn the whole codex every time.
Yes. That's been a big thing for me as well. Like playing different armies hasn't felt too crazy. Like so I'll go through like waves of excitement for certain armies, and I'll play them a bunch, and then I'll kind of move on to another army, play them a bunch, and then go back. And so it hasn't been too hard to do that, because sometimes in 9th edition it was a nightmare.
Oh,
so trying to like going back to like Guard and then trying to relearn like all the stratagems and stuff, and like all the bubbles and like whatever all the characters do.
And then there's your opponent. And you're like, what does your army do? And you have no idea. Necrons have to plan their special things before the game starts to figure out what's going to happen, but other factions don't. And then they get this other bonus. And you're using Canoptek Court from a White Dwarf supplement, so that does something different and gives you more and less of different things and more stratagems. And you're like, this guy can do triple backflips and move 36 inches. I didn't mention it because if I read through the 3 A4 pages of my stratagems, we wouldn't get a game in today.
It was a nightmare. Like, I think the 10th edition is definitely a massive improvement over 9th in terms of playability.
Yeah, like, I'm sure that people who were like, balance and competitiveness was more there in 9th because it was layers and you had to get really good with a faction to be really good with a faction. 10th edition, it's like, I stick Bringers of the Flame on the table and I can do all right.
Yeah, I think the thing I miss most was just the crunchiness of list building. In terms of like trying to fit in your weapon choices and stuff.
Weapons and points. I do miss weapons and points.
So for me, and I'm saying for me as if it's a subjective opinion. I'm talking objectively here. Like,
yeah. This is the internet. This is the correct opinion.
I really feel like kind of like for most people, 90% of Warhammer is just building lists like by themselves, just like going like, I'm gonna build this center, like this list and this list, and this will be cool. And that's the 10th edition. It's not as fun to build lists. Like it's you just kind of build it and then it's done. Whereas I remember like loving kind of, having to pick out weapon choices and the granularity of like having like 5 points left over. And you're like, okay, how do I maximize the use of it? Yeah. How do I do a flamer here? Or do I like get rid of this unit and now I've got meltas on this squad and like something that's a whole different thing. And there was just a lot of joy to that. Like that, it's almost like a crunchy sort of RPG vibe to the wargaming element.
Optimizing it. You can really optimize it.
I'm not great at optimizing lists. I would often be making like thematic ones, but I'd want lists. It was fun to build those lists in those types of systems. I really feel like I've just missed that element of it. I think that for 11th edition, I'd like them to go back to points. And I think a lot of the other innovations they've done for 10th have been good, but like for weapon options, they need to go back to points, I think.
And then we can actually have, things that matter. It's like, I could give my Imperial Guard Sergeant a las pistol or a plasma pistol. Oh boy, I wonder which one.
Yeah. And I don't want a las pistol to be as good as a plasma pistol, I want those two things to feel different.
And then you can choose whether you're going for elite hunting or if you're just like, you're a dude, get in the field.
Exactly. And I just feel like the game has just walked away from that style of play for it's been doing it steadily over the last like 15 years.
Games Workshop's whole thing, I think they figured out people only stay in playing it for like a couple of years. So here's Combat Patrol, you get an army, you play some games of Combat Patrol, you can leave. Or you get addicted. Sort of.
Yeah. It's all about maximizing the amount of money that you spend in the like 1 to 2 years that you spend playing Warhammer.
You just couldn't do with Warhammer Fantasy. Because it was, you get your army, which is admittedly 120 models, and that's it. You are done for every edition of Warhammer Fantasy that's ever been and ever going to come.
Yeah.
Age of Sigmar, which was like, you play with 30 models, and now you're bored of that, so you get another army, and then you can build into that more if you want.
This really frustrates me. I think this is like probably the core to a lot of my issues with Games Workshop. This business model, and it's still their business model. It's their business model like 20 years ago. Like, as you said, they've identified that people get into Warhammer, they stick around for a little bit, and then they tend to leave. Because over like the last 20 years, like I've watched, like I first got into Warhammer with like a big bunch of friends. Yeah. Like a load of us got into it, and over the last 20 years, like everyone has dropped out, you know, like everyone has left by this stage, like over the last 2 decades. And for a lot of people, it wasn't like that they stopped enjoying the game or they didn't love the world or the setting anymore. It was because they were fed up of like having to buy updates and buy new books or keep up with the, you know, with the changes. Like what's frustrating is that Games Workshop go all in on just trying to like maximize the amount of money that people spend in that window instead of trying to keep people invested in the game. You know, and that's what really kind of frustrates me. And it was why I was so excited for Combat Patrol in 10th edition, like the game mode, because it felt to me like they were kind of encouraging people to, instead of going really deep into an army, to instead go broad, to be like, okay, I really love this army, I'm having a lot of fun with it, I've bought what I need to buy, I'm done, and now I'm going to buy another army. Because that's how I am. Like, I got really into an army, I'd buy it, I'd enjoy it, and then I'd move on to another army. Yeah, like, I've got, like, 9 armies, but not many of them are as big as, like, you know, they're not big. Like, you said, there'll be, like, 30 models or whatever that I've bought from a friend.
Nearly 2,000 points of Deathwatch, but we'll have to see how that goes. But, yeah, then that'll be it. That'll be done. I know for most people, a finished army is, like, 3,000 points, of which you can choose your 2,000-point army or whatever, but I just like smaller games now.
Yeah, same. And I was really excited by the idea that would actually be like the focus of the game.
Small games,
they would be like,
Patrol, here's a little bit bigger. That's it.
Spread out, go broad. I really wanted Combat Patrol to kind of be that, but it just, as a game mode, I feel like it was very half-baked.
I think they're done with it now. It wasn't ready. Yeah.
Yeah, they're done. They're like, okay, over. Like, it's only been used as an excuse to make the Combat Patrol, like, bundles worse. They're like, oh, it's got to be balanced. So therefore, we're taking out all the vehicles.
Surely they make quite a bit of money off vehicles because it's it's plastic. It's the amount of plastic. It doesn't matter whether it's shaped or bent.
It doesn't. To be honest, like, I mean, they make the margins on the plastic is so good. You know, they just want to sell less for more. I was a whale though, you know, like, so I would get hooked on the game, and I would continue to buy and get suckered into spending more. You know, even today, I'm a big sucker for like FOMO.
See, I'm pretty good at stopping that because I was never able to like afford this stuff. So it was like, I need to learn to not care. Or it was like, this new game's come out and it's, well, let's say £30 for like the year 2000. Yeah, no, I do not have that much pocket money to get that. But in 3 months' time at Christmas when it's on sale, then I'll enjoy the game. So it's similar for like the new Space Marine 2 that's coming out. I'm not gonna buy it, not at release. So I've even made a video kind of mocking the idea of, here's a fake reason why I'm not going to do it, and it's based around something weird.
No, I totally feel you there. I just wish that they would focus more on that kind of casual side and just keeping people into... And I think that things like the detachments across months, as opposed to like one every 3 years, would help people to invest in.
Something more than kill teams, I'm thinking, is a release. Just something like that, because they will promise like, oh yeah, we've got rolling releases for your faction throughout the edition, and it's just been, here's the kill team, but in 40k, and that's what Votan has got as their new release, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes as a so I don't want to offend any Space Marine players out there, but
again,
non-Space Marine player, again, earlier on, I'm like, get rid of the faction. But it does sometimes feel like a non-Space Marine player that you're often playing like not even second fiddle, like 17th fiddle to the Space Marine kind of faction. It's like it's every other release is like something Space Marine.
When are the Eldar getting updated since 1989?
Yeah. And I mean, they got a nice refresh, and it does feel like Games Workshop have been trying to like refresh a lot of factions recently. Like, you know, at least little elements of them, like the Kroot, right, got like a big kind of glow up. My big issue though is that they keep selling those in these like bundles, like army boxes, and then sitting on them for months. And so if I'm like, I want to buy a squad of Kroot warriors, I can't. And have you noticed that? And I found this out Inquisitor Greyfax is in the Order of Hereticus
Yep.
box. The named Inquisitor models, they're all in those bundles. They've been taken down off the store. You can't buy them separately now. Like last week, you could go on the store and buy all these models separately. And I was thinking at it being like,
right, okay.
At first I was like, hey, good, at least Games Workshop will finally release some bundles that don't have exclusive models in them. This is how bundles should be done. A discount on existing products. And then I went to look up Inquisitor Greyfax. This model does not exist on the store.
Okay. That sucks.
Like, how can I report on that positively? Like, come on, please, people. Like, tell me. How is that a good thing for anyone? You know, it frustrates me. The entire business model of like giant bundles and army boxes and stuff. Like, these things should be little cool, like, oh, awesome discounts. They shouldn't be like the way that things get released.
Yeah, because if it's the only way to get it, then it has the really high price tag. Oh,
yeah. And that's why I think that they're only doing Kill Team, like you were mentioning about Kill Team. That's why they're only doing them Kill Team boxes. That's the only way you get new models now, because otherwise it like takes down the value of those big bundles, because they need to save them up to sell big army boxes.
Right, yes.
And it is completely warped like how Warhammer is sold. And it's really frustrating.
It is, because even when the Novitiates came out, it was like, they're in a Kill Team box, Kill Team Chalnath or something, with the Tau. I'm not going to buy the new scenery and the game just for the 10 models. And then a bunch of months later, they came out and they're like really expensive for
because there's so much value. There's so much value because they're an entire army in Kill Team, you know?
It's, you know, and their own version of Infinity, which... Yeah. I mean, Infinity's doing their own, film or TV series?
Yeah, they're doing a Warhammer Plus? No. They're doing a movie. I think they've got a movie. Coming out.
Which, you know, I'm actually looking at Infinity and thinking, maybe if there's more players, because I like the models of Infinity, I like the terrain of Infinity, the style of Infinity, I could get some, you know, not Battle Sisters, but they sure do look like Battle Sisters.
There's like the nuns, the nun faction.
Yeah, but then people that play Infinity are like, no, we do 300 points and it takes us 4 hours. Like, I want 100, 150 points. Whatever's in a starter box, that's it.
I'm really kind of hyped for that movie. I'm not like super into the Infinity setting.
It'd just be nice to see, you know, Warhammer get shown up.
Yes. So the thing is, like, the reason why Warhammer has so much dominance of the wargame industry is because they have all this extended media, and it draws people in, like video games and
the books. They've had the books for decades.
The books have been so huge, and like obviously, you know, having retail stores like on the high street really helps too. But what, like, they took America by releasing awesome games through memes, you know, like it's kind of its own self-perpetuating thing, to the extent where the vast majority of people who love Warhammer don't play the war game, which is kind of wild, you know. I think
tabletop war game.
Yeah, people are like surprised. They're like, "What is Warhammer?" I thought it was a book series, you know. But this has allowed them to like really push prices up and get away with things that no other company would get away with. You know, you don't see Mantic Games kind of doing this. So I really hope that this Infinity like movie takes off. I hope it does really well, because I would love to see Corvus Belli do really well off the back of this and compete a little bit with Warhammer, because Games Workshop need competition, to be frank. Like, they need competition to do better, because there's a lot of complaining. There's like, people have had issues with Games Workshop for so long, so much. They need competition. They really do.
Just to be like a viable alternative that isn't just, I'll 3D print some Games Workshop models and then still use Games Workshop rules and slightly off-brand Games Workshop rules with one-page rules and things like that.
So many people I talk to are like, I've had enough of Games Workshop. I'm sick of all their rubbishing of 40k. I'm going to play Horus Heresy. You're like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, it's still Games Workshop, man. Like, it's not going to change anything. Like, you're just moving your like place in the line sheet, you know? It's
like, I'm not going to play Space Marines anymore. I'm going to play Chaos Space Marines.
Yeah, right. Space Marines have got too much dominance. I'm going to switch it up. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some competition for Games Workshop. That is exciting. That's genuinely exciting to me. Even if I'm not like super interested in Infinity setting, I know it's a good setting. There's lots of fans of it. Lots of people are really big fans of it. And like, I always say this, like, there's people who I speak to who are like, I only play Warhammer. Like, that's the only game I'm interested in. It's like, dude, You know, there are the other setting. There's other settings in the wargaming world that are really interesting too, and you might love them just as much if you give them time. You know, if you were to spend as much time as you spent with Warhammer,
or even a
with
fraction
them,
of the
you know?
time, just be like, this month
Yeah.
I'm doing a totally different thing. But you know, while your
Yeah.
codex isn't out, while you're waiting till the end of 10th edition
Yeah.
for your Imperial Guard codex, then
Yeah. It's sort of like being in the. It's like as if video gamers would only play like Call of Duty, and that was it. Like most people play Call of Duty, and then if you played any other game, it would be weird. But like, especially in Warhammer, where you do have to wait like 3 years between like a codex or so. Like,
Yeah.
try another game in that time. You know, like you know, when you're bored, try another game, baby. You might suggest.
well then the problem
Well,
is your opponent might have just got their codex and want to play it over and over again.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's the thing. And maybe if people were doing that more, Games Workshop would actually release incremental rules updates to factions and detachments here and there to try and keep people, you know, kind of hooked in. Because they tried that thing with the season model, and they put the kind of path to glory, the Crusade rules were all about Leviathan to the extent where it was really weird because me and all my friends were playing that like a Crusade tournament, but none of us played Tyranids. So it was just weird. Like, it was just odd. Like, the theme didn't work at all. And then now it's Chalnath and like
No, well,
Necrons.
they've had Pry Nexus, which came out with the Necron
Oh,
Codex.
Pry
That was like
Nexus.
3 months
Yeah.
later. Now they're not going to do another Crusade book for this like quarter. It's just
Oh,
they've
yeah.
put rules in White Dwarf 502 to say, yeah, you know the Pry Nexus card deck that's sold out everywhere and no one can get? Here's how you use that as your new Crusade campaign.
Oh,
So it's
see,
not special
I-
missions, it's just you play the cards and you get victory points and experience points at the same time.
I despair for casual players. Like, I'm a casual player, but I'm very involved in like the Warhammer ecosystem. You know, like I'm surrounded by people who play it. Like,
It's like
I'm very
your
I
job.
create content around it. Yeah, it's my job, right? And I didn't know that. Like, I'm finding it hard to like keep up with like the Crusade. I didn't know that that there was that in White Dwarf. Man, I don't know. Like, sometimes I feel like if you're like a casual player who like buys some Space Marines every so often and then wanders down to your local store like some random Saturday with your codex and you're like, I'm here to play some games.
Yeah, you try to play and then you get told, oh, that rule, how dare you read that rule from the Codex? That rule doesn't work like that anymore. Haven't you read PDF 4?
I suppose the argument would be that Warhammer's a lifestyle game.
Oh,
But
right,
you-
yeah.
you have
It's
to-
a
you have-
lifestyle choice.
Yeah, yeah, no, but like, you know, there are certain products that you have to be like super invested in. You have to give your all to, and you know, and that's. I think that's why they love calling Warhammer a hobby. You know, like it's the Warhammer hobby. It's not,
Not
like
a
the Warhammer
wargaming
game.
hobby.
Yeah, it's not
Which
the
it should
wargame
be,
hobby. It's
'cause
the
it is.
Warhammer hobby. Yeah, you know, it's not that Warhammer is a part of anything bigger. It's
No,
Warhammer. The
no.
end. I'm very outspoken on that. I get a lot of I get a lot of pushback on that. But yeah, so. I guess there is an argument to be said that's the case, but I think that like I just want the game to be like as accessible as possible. I want as many people as possible to play, and so I'd love it to be easier for casuals to kind of play the game. Like, totally,
Edition is a bit better for that, at least.
it is. It is. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's easier to learn and
Yeah.
then much harder to master, I guess.
I kind of miss, like, I do kind of miss the old kind of 2017 Kill Team where it was like kind of like small Warhammer
Yeah.
Spawn, you know?
I still play
And
that
I think-
because I think that was the best
Yeah.
version of Kill Team. Yeah.
Oh, no
20
way. No. 2004 Kill Team was the best with the
Did they
with
really
the
have
were
rules then? Which
yeah,
was-
like, so
Oh, right. Is this like Schaefer's Last Chances?
yeah, like one
Right.
person would play like the
I remember
sentries
them.
and the other person was like the
Yeah.
commandos.
That was not so much two kill teams fighting. It was one person is the heroes, one person is the villains.
Yeah. I love that.
Oh,
I
I
love
remember
playing
the
the sentries.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
then there's things like, oh, my Space Marines are sentries, and then they get ganked by some Chaos Cultist with knives. Like,
That makes no sense. Yeah. I always played sentries with my guard, and my
Well,
friend
yeah.
always played like the commandos and space marine, and that made a lot more sense. That felt a lot cleaner.
Then the other
But
way
yeah,
around.
no, that
Okay.
was awesome. Mhm.
That
That
was
was
fun.
awesome.
I like the 2017-18 version because it was weird
Mm-hmm.
and janky, and you could have like 16 Gretchen as your kill team. You could have 3 Lictors. It mostly worked. And then when you look at the rules for that and the new Imperialis, you're like, oh, you have the thing where you add tokens next to people and they do that as their activation. Maybe they've tried it already and that's it. But if 11th edition, to stop the I go, you go that they've had forever, they could have this, we set our tokens down to say what we're going to do, if we're going to move, if we're going to advance, if we're going to charge. But then they've also tried that with the Apocalypse game, which was its own box set, which did not do so well.
I think for good reason, honestly. I think Apocalypse has always sounded really cool.
It looks
but like
cool
in
on
practice,
the table when I've played it. Yeah. But then when I've done it before, I do an Apocalypse game every year.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes in the past it's been like, okay, we have 10,000 points on the table and 12 players. That's fine. When your friend group and the people, because they're adults with jobs, we're no longer university kids, getting all of them together in a place that will allow us to maybe leave our stuff overnight, it's a bit harder. So we're like, we'll do 5,000 points and we have 8 hours. There we go.
Yeah, and it's more about the experience of like...
Oh yeah, just say you did it and
that
you put a Titan on the battlefield.
It wouldn't be like I only play Apocalypse games, that wouldn't be...
Yeah, you don't get that.
No. Like those kind of crazy people who have just the armies of knights, the ones like you see them at conventions. And they've got like full armies of just knights. And they're playing, and you're just like, this is too much. It's really cool to look at, but like, wow.
Yeah, this is where we need to ban Space Marines comes in. We need to have a separate game thing, which is like, okay, no Titanic units under like 1,500 points. So, like with Imperial Knights, for example, like I love the idea of having a faction that's just so different from every other army. It's just that it just doesn't work in practice. I think it's just. I like the armigers. I think the armigers fit. Yeah. They're really tough. They still have a lot of wounds. Each of them is a medium to heavy tank. Yeah. But it's when you get, now I have 24 wounds and I can shoot you from across the table because I'm a giant monster knight creature. It's not quite the same. I was this close to buying an armiger like a year ago, I think, back whenever Sisters needed them. Whenever they were like the only good vehicle for Sisters. Oh, I mean, late 9th edition, early 10th edition, yeah. We had no melter at the start of 10th edition. Bringers of the Flame is the only way to get melters that work. Yeah. It's wild though, the 10th has been out for a year now. That's actually... I know. Weird to think my channel is just over a year old. Well, I think it's been going really well. I mean, hey, look, on the other hand, another year we'll be on 11th edition, so we'll have plenty more stuff to talk about then. No, surely not another year. It'll be 2 years. Okay, 2 years. 2 years. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay. Because next year they need to redo a whole nother specialist game system and be like, okay, we tried bringing back Old World. It was, it happened. We tried Imperialis. It, also happened. Next they'll be like, Battlefleet Gothic. We're going to do a whole new Battlefleet Gothic. Oh man, I hope not. Like, let Sleeping Dogs lie. What I really don't want them to do is Mordheim. I just leave it alone. Don't do Once it again. Once we got the the expert update version of Mordheim, so that a Mordheim warband isn't just 20 Skaven with slings, because slings are overpowered, and people knew this back in 2002. But yes, Mordheim is fun. I like playing Mordheim. A bunch of my club got into Mordheim and they did nothing else for 2 months. It's like, do you want to play anything? No? Yeah. Just Mordheim? Just Mordheim? But those character-driven games can be it's what I loved about Old Necromunda, where you would it's so compelling to have your character. It's like that RPG thing, right? Where you've got your named guys and you have to roll on the death tables. Are they going to live? Are they going to die? And it can be really brutal sometimes. Yeah. I found that Necromunda is more awkward because you can't, unlike an RPG, you can't change the model to get new equipment unless you cut the hand off, which don't. Don't want to do. And they had the perfect opportunity to kind of fix that in the new Necromunda, and then they decided not to just not make them multi-pose to go for example the Cawdor models, for example, are just all monopose. It's but this is the problem with the old metal ones. Now you've just redone it. You've redone the issue. Well, frustrating. They did the computer game and then stopped it. Yeah, for good reason though. In fairness. I never got to play it. Was it really bad? I played the Mordheim computer game. The Mordheim one was great. It was fun. It was fun. I found it very addictive. I was at the point where I was like, I want it to be over, but I need to find out what happens to my sisters. Unfortunately, I had really, really high hopes for the Necromunda game,
even if it was just like the Mordheim game again, but like
Yeah.
in Necromunda. I was really looking forward to it because at that time I was really into Necromunda as well. I was playing like the new edition, and no, it didn't. It did not work out. It wasn't
the
great. It wasn't
Mordheim
great.
got like a 1 out of 10 for me as soon as I saw, oh, the vampire faction is paywalled. Right. And the Witch Hunters as well. You know, one of the core 6 warbands that have always been the core 6 warbands. It wasn't like it was orcs or, you know, dwarf treasure hunters as an add-on.
So I'm assuming then that you didn't get into the old world at all. You weren't like, you weren't swept up in the hype.
Got all of my old world models and I played a few games of old world and I really enjoyed it. It's like, yeah, it's this again from the past. Do you remember being children and everyone else who's like 10 years older than me and like, we never stopped playing this. We've been playing 9th Age for this whole time. Oh, right. I didn't know what this shadowy place of the gaming club was.
That's fun. That's fun. For like 5 years before it came out, like, you know, knowing that it was coming, I was so excited for it. And then it launched, and it launched with like Bretonnians and Doom Kings.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to collect. I have an Empire army. And now it's just like it's just left me totally behind.
I still have my Skaven. I have my vampire counts. I have some Dark Elves. Again, I was like, why did I buy these after knowing what the Dark Eldar are like to paint and build and how fragile they are?
Yeah.
So
I had a bunch of Skaven in anticipation, and then to find out that like the Skaven weren't getting any support at all, was like, oh, okay, never mind. Okay,
but unlike with 40k, just because they're in Legends, people don't care with Warhammer. Even the tournaments are like, no, shut up. I don't care that they're not a core army. You can have your Skaven and your vampire counts and all the rest of them in our tournament.
I feel like though with rank and flank games that like the strategy of them is a little bit constrained. It really matters like where you deploy, and then you end up just kind of bopping into the guy on the other side of the table from you.
Like whatever regiment is over by deployment sometimes.
Yeah.
Or when I see a high elf army on the opposite side of the board, because like, oh, they're good at movement, they have really good high initiative, so they fight first in combat, they have great magic and shooting, and I'm there with my undead, and it's like, well, if I had guns, they would die, but I have one gun, it's on a Banshee, and it's an 8-inch range.
That is a stat I miss in Warhammer 40k Initiative. It meant the Dark Eldar always felt different. It meant it like made them feel really... They had, I don't know, just like a very interesting design space where they would be first, you know, and they could not survive attacks, so they had to kill you. Or else.
Because Imperial Guard fixing bayonets and being able to wipe out a Cabalite squad, yeah, you can see why there's not that many points difference between Cabalites and Imperial Guard.
Yeah. Eldar Guardians though had it really rough back then, if I remember right. I remember they had really short range. They were fast.
12-inch range, yeah. Well, it depends on which one, because at some point they were the only ones that could, you know, advance in the current terminology. No one else could do that.
Yeah, fleet of foot, right?
Yes,
like that was
move D6 extra inches instead of shooting.
All the old terms, you know, coming back to me.
Yeah. Or fleet of hoof, fleet of claw, as I think it was called in one of the editions, with lots of slashes.
They should have just went all in on Universal Special rules for 10th edition. I still don't know why they didn't. Like,
it is weird when you have similar rules that are different wording, and it's like, should this be the same as the other one? Because it seems like it should, because the Nexus in the index for the Genestealer Cult, you can do a free stratagem every turn, whereas the Space Marine one with the captain is a free stratagem every battle round. Which one's the error? Are neither of them errors? What's happening?
Like, it's weird. It's made for like very finicky like rules. Kind of, you know, there's like differences whether or not it says you or your unit and things like that. Oh yeah,
this model, this unit, totally different thing.
It's just, I really wish they'd standardize a lot of that stuff. It sounds like you haven't been getting into like Age of Sigmar. You haven't been swept up in the hype of
with Age of Sigmar 4th edition. I decided not to. I looked at the rules and I was like, this reads like a legal text. Where it's like, rule 1.41 says you can do this. Rule 1.51 is only applied in these situations. And then you see a game played and look at the rule book and you're like, I have no idea how these two things go together.
It's really interesting actually to contrast and compare it with 10th edition. Because it launched with Spearhead, that game mode, which is the combat patrol of Age of Sigmar. Because with the Spearhead rules, we just use the core rules. And then they have like a separate like advanced rules.
There's 6 separate sections for rules.
Yeah, which was weird, but so they just have the core rules, and that's literally like move, shoot, how to attack, like the really basic stuff. And so that was a nice, easy onboarding onto it. And I will say the Spearhead has felt pretty fresh and pretty fun. And I'm hoping that 11th edition 40k, when it comes out, because we all know it's going to come out, with its new combat patrol mode, which we know will happen, I hope that they take a lot of lessons from Spearhead, because I feel like combat patrol felt like kind of like they were attempting to do mini Warhammer 40k, but badly. Whereas Spearhead, it's its own game mode. Like, it's got its own kind of like, it's got objective cards. Stolen from the Batman miniatures game, by the way. No one knows this because no one's played the Batman miniatures game. But literally, you've got like, you draw a hand of cards at the beginning of your turn, and they all have an objective on them that you have to complete. Or you can use them instead as like a special ability, like you can like a stratagem. Like, they've all got a stratagem on them, so you can either use them as a stratagem or
you can score them as victory points. Right?
Yeah, and that's how the miniature game works.
That's pretty cool. Yeah? That's interesting.
And then then you redraw like up to 3 at the end of every turn. So it's kind of cool. And I honestly I kind of wish that it was just like brought into like Age of Sigmar, just the game, because it's just a really neat like way of handling stratagems and that amount of information. I think that Age of Sigmar is a bit of a glimpse into 11th edition. I think they're probably going to be learning a lot from 11th edition. We
saw that with 10th edition taking it from Horus Heresy, and also 3rd edition Age of Sigmar. Like, oh yes, Horus Heresy has reactions, and people like reactions, except when they're like, oh, I didn't know your army could do that reaction, now I've lost the game because you moved back and are on objectives, I can't reach you.
Yeah. What do you think of Overwatch in 10th edition? Do you think it slows down things too much? I like doing it. Well,
I like that it's in the movement phase. Maybe it should cost like 2 command points, and that's what you need to do to change it, because it's one of the core stratagems that's so easy to super optimize for. You just add turret weapons, and then there you go. It's one of your best stratagems.
Yeah. It feels, and it's always felt weird to me that like it's kind of like the role that flamethrowers have now is to be really good at Overwatch, and it just feels weird. Like, it's just odd. Like, they feel like they should be an aggressive weapon, not like a kind of defensive
weapon. Which this deters charges, kills Repentia. That's its job.
My crew for Repentia. Hey, but at least there's less Orgo-Flagellant spam now.
So people are just going, oh, I'm not taking them, I'm taking Repentia instead. Unless it's the Penitent Host detachment, then both.
I usually don't like those types of like detachments
super specialized ones.
Yeah, they're super specialized and they give you like 4 abilities that only affect like certain units.
There is unfortunate wording in that, because it's one of these things where you think, oh, you look at that and you look at other rules and it's like, which one is it meant to work like? Because it says on the Penitent Host, you have to choose at the start of each round one of these abilities. It's not at the start of a battle round. You can pick one of these to be active. You have to. Unless it's a typo, which it might be.
I hope it is.
Yeah.
Because why limit that? Like, why? Like, that's an interesting choice to make as a player. Like, when am I going to use these?
Yeah. When do I activate this ability and not? Otherwise, it's which one do I discard now because I know I'm going to need the other 2 later.
But then sometimes I wonder, like, are Games Workshop even thinking on that level? Like, is this an interesting choice for the player?
Yeah,
or are they just like, oh, just give them +1 to run?
Seeing like the Goliath Rock Grinder got its rules changed, so it no longer does extra impact hits. It's now, if the enemy retreats from you, you do damage to them. So it's entirely my player's, my opponent's choice.
Yeah.
We saw that in 3rd edition with the Age of Sigmar Slaneshi people. Oh yeah, you can offer a super cool dice to your opponent, and they'll get to do something cool, but you'll get to do something really, really bad to them in the future. And a lot of opponents were like, oh, well, if it benefits you more, then no, I just won't. And so Slanesh players are like, well, my army rule only works with my opponent's consent, which is great for Slanesh to have as like, that's an interesting rule, consent with Slanesh.
Like, I think that's a really cool, like, faction ability in the sense of, it kind of rewards you for being very social, and being very like, hey, would you like a 6 here? And I think that's a lot of fun, but they should have made it so that there was a downside to not accepting it, right? Like, so you could get offered it and you could take the upside, but you got like, because in Age of Sigmar 4th edition, if you don't accept the temptation die, you get D3 mortal wounds, and that feels good. The problem with that system though is that there's no temptation anymore. You just like, they'll always take it because it's a 6 and they can use that on charge rolls. So they can like guarantee charges the moment that you give them like 2 of them. And also the upside isn't that great. So for the Slanesh player.
Okay. It's a similar
so
sort of problem.
Womp womp, it's the classic. But maybe, in the Codex in like 2 years, it'll be fixed, maybe.
Yeah, we'll see if they do that for, Chaos Space Marines. If it's going to be, here's your Emperor's Children Codex, and we'll just take a bunch of stuff out and do like a God-focused one. Maybe Demons will be like, hey, yeah, you know how we're 5 armies in one and none of them really work too well? What if we stuck it like in Age of Sigmar and just put the Slanesh demons in Codex Emperor's Children?
So Emperor's Children, you think it's definitely for real happening?
Oh, just not soon.
I have to assume that like the pipeline for 40k and Age of Sigmar are quite separate. Because even though there's been like a new edition of Age of Sigmar and like a whole ton of new models and things like that, that's still like a separate design team, So I have to imagine that like there's something that the 40k team have been working on that we haven't seen yet. So I'm kind of sad now that it wasn't like the like the Inquisition getting a whole new product line. Or even...
Well, no, because Age of Sigmar product line was Cortez. That's just a Sigmarine.
Yeah. That is what I would have loved. What really frustrates me is that they even gave like a new named Inquisitor, like a refresh, when what they should have done was update the generic Inquisitors. Like,
because they're metal still. Just give us a plastic one that's multi-part with a Witch Hunter hat as an option.
Do you remember the old like Witch Hunter and Retinue box set? He's got like the hat and the sword and the flamethrower, and then he's got all the acolytes with him. Yeah, they should have redone. I know they just did the acolyte box, but that wasn't good enough. They should do a new one with the Inquisitor and like really cool, weird looking models.
The acolyte set's so weird because it makes like 8 different models, but it's sold as a box of 5, and one of them's the Servitor. So you need 2 boxes to get all the models, but it's expensive and hard to get. I don't know.
It's weird. It's really weird. And honestly, like, I was so hyped whenever I first like heard they were doing an acolyte box. I was like, yes, finally, we're back. And then I saw the models, and I was like, oh, okay. They're not like the most exciting. Like they could have been a lot weirder, They could have been a demon
host. So they might just drop the demon host like profile and the Jacaro profile in this Agent of the Imperium. So that's what you can look forward to, Deathwatch and Inquisition players. You get 2 fewer creatures, and people love Jacaros and demon hosts.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to buy a Jacaro on like the store, but it was just too expensive for like the model. I looked at it, I was like, I'm not paying like £25 for that. It's like ancient
half an inch
little
gorilla.
monkey guy. Yeah. That was definitely a big disappointment. I would have loved to have seen the generic Inquisitors get some time. Like they've got the guy with a hat, and then there's the female Inquisitor as well. Would have been really cool. Like
Draxus?
Just no, like the generic one. Where she's got like the big hair and like the cane. Like the really old, like from 2000, like, whatever.
The one that reminds me of like Isabella von Carstein.
Yeah, like that would have been really cool. I would have loved to have seen like a box set like that. So it's sort of a disappointment that they're doing that faction and not like really shining a light on the Inquisitors.
No multi-pose models. That seems to be their rules.
I'm sure you probably feel the same way, where you've got like the Systems of Battle army. It's very easy to like buy an Inquisitor and just throw them in there and be like, ta-da! It's not Ordo Hereticus army, but like, is that ever going to be worth it? Like with the rules.
I know. The new Inquisitor is changed from a 5+ feel no pain against mortal wounds to a 6+ invulnerable save, which all the battle sisters get anyway.
This is always the problem with the Witch Hunters, like conceptually as well, where like it kind of felt like you could just play Systems of Battle back then too, and it always felt a bit better to do so because of the faith points synergized with them. Whereas the Inquisition stuff always felt a bit like weird. Games Workshop's always struggled, I think, with like just normal guy models. Like he's just a normal guy, toughness 3, strength 3, armor save of like 5+, maybe 4+ if we're getting spicy.
Got some spicy.
Yeah, gotten some character. Gotta give him like an invulnerable save 6+, But it's like, how do you stop that? How do you make this guy like really good? Like, because Inquisitors are meant to be these terrifying forces, but they're like, it's political force.
They shouldn't be on the tabletop, but they are. So yeah. You could do lots of like Genestealer Cult Primus and Nexus things where they move units around before the battle starts. That's one way of doing it.
That would be cool. Like that would be cool, yeah. Or bring back the orbital strikes. Remember those?
Yeah,
bring
yeah.
that back. Tie it
It's not
into
quite
them.
exterminatus, but it's like this area needs to not be here anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Some off-board artillery. You know, like that could be kind of neat. I mean, they kind of represent their pulling in of all the resources of the Imperium, the Navy and stuff.
That's how you get the Imperial Navy, an orbital strike rather than here's my squad of breaches.
Yeah, that's how you get the Navy. That and like a single little admiral of the fleet for some reason standing beside your guard general.
Yeah, it was a fleet liaison. I think that was what
yeah, that was it. Yeah.
That was a really nice model. I wanted them for my Praetorians, just
Mm.
holding the gloves. Yeah, that's an officer. That looks like an officer and a gentleman. So, Discourse Minis, where can we find you across the internet?
You can search for me using the term Discourse Minis in YouTube, and you'll find me there, or Dungeons and Discourse for my RPG content.
If you want to have you shouted Hasbro instead of Games Workshop.
It is, yes. Probably worse, Hasbro.
Right, so here is a video on my take on the Deathwatch stuff that's come out, and here is a video on her things that have come out for the Deathwatch and why that's, the worst thing that could possibly have happened to Games Workshop. Well, for
Objectively
us,
correct.
The worst thing that could have happened to us. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
My darlings and viewers, have a great day of 40k.
Bye-bye.